Xbox On. Welcome to Xbox On, a podcast with one host about one console, Xbox. I'm said host Jesse DeRosa, and on today's episode, we'll be talking about the latest Xbox news for the week of March 14th, 2024, including a former Xbox executive believes Microsoft will now have to decide whether or not to continue making consoles at all. PlayStation's former boss explains where he believes the industry is headed. The Fallout TV show actually looks pretty darn good, and more. On this day in Xbox history, in the year 2003, 21 years ago, Kung Fu Chaos was released for the Xbox in South Korea. Yes, that's the one we came up with this week. Fighting party game published by Microsoft Game Studios, developed by a new team at the time called Just Add Monsters. Those guys would later go on to rebrand themselves after a couple early games into a team called Ninja Theory. So look at that. All comes full circle. We got a team that would eventually become an Xbox Game Studios team, Ninja Theory, in their original incarnation, making this little party fighting game for the original Xbox. I've never played Kung Fu Chaos. That is a game I know only in name, and I honestly don't even know much about what the game looks like. But I do remember, this is like, again, growing up, living my youth in Blockbuster stores as my dad would work. I basically just remember seeing this box art a lot and being like, I wouldn't play that. Just like, let me look at Sonic Heroes again because I'm stupid and I'm 7. But anyway, welcome everyone to episode 250 of the Xbox On podcast. We are a quarter of the way to 1,000 episodes. In celebration of this momentous occasion, I would like everyone to please stand for the Xbox Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the brand of the gaming and entertainment division of Microsoft, and to the shareholders for which it stands, one business, under fail, relatively profitable, with gamerscore and world premieres for all. You may now be seated. I understand that joke might not make a whole lot of sense to some of the international listeners, but just take my word for it. That was incredibly funny. That was great. That was really well done. Mike Clark writes in and says, the best Xbox podcast, favorite part of my week. Thanks again. P.S. Something wrong with dating your sister? Mike Clark, I'm not going to answer that, because even if it is a joke, unlike my Pledge of Allegiance, that's not funny. That's not funny. I'm from Georgia, okay? That's not funny. Anyway, it is funny. I love you, like Mike Clark. Thank you for writing it. Guys, 250 weeks of Xbox On. You know what we're going to do to celebrate this episode? Pretty much nothing out of the ordinary, just like it was the case for episode 100 and episode 200. I'm just going to steamroll right ahead because who gives a flying fuck? It's podcasts are a dime a dozen. Let's just jump into the show. All right, you guys, we got some notable game releases this week I want to start things off with. First of all, Contra Operation Galuga. Not Beluga like the whale. Galuga. Probably is a place that I should know of. I don't know. Maybe it's fictional. Platforms, Xbox Series, Xbox One, PC. This little bitch here is out now. You can go ahead and play this little darling. Contra's not had the greatest run in recent years with its most recent entries. I think the last Contra game came out like 3 or 4 years ago and was also not very well received. But actually, I don't know. Maybe this game is being well received. I don't know. But I love Contra. I love classic Contra and Metal Slug. This is these side-scrolling running gun shooter games. Classic. Love it. Sega. All right. Next up, speaking of classics, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection is out this Friday, March 14th. This is one I'm very excited for, but will not be playing day one because I want to make it through Wasteland 3 before I start on anything else. But Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, this is, like I said when it was announced a few weeks ago, the most excited I've been about anything Star Wars in a long time. I don't think I've cared about anything Star Wars to this extent since maybe Rise of the Resistance opened up at Disney World. Yeah, probably. That was 2019? All right, so it's been a minute, but it's exciting. Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. I love these games so much. These are actually quintessential PSP games for me. Well, actually, PS2 games is how I played them growing up. But The PSP entries I played a whole shit ton of as well. So talking a lot about the Logitech G Cloud. This is a Logitech G Cloud game. So I'm diving into this motherfucker probably the next couple weeks. You guys, that's really it for big releases this week. Let's start out this week getting real deep into the news with our mildly amusing stories, some things to talk about to kind of warm us up for the week. And I want to start off just right off the bat. Let's just get into this Fallout trailer. So the Fallout TV show, it's an Amazon Prime show because everything's some streaming service show nowadays. We've known about this for quite a while now. Actually, we've known about it for a long time if we're just talking about how long we know that the idea of a Fallout TV show has been coming. But, we got a teaser trailer, I think, sometime last year, and it's been in more substantial development for, in recent time. And we've been hearing about it a lot in the news. And I haven't really cared too much because, for the most part, video game TV shows are either like the Halo show and they make me want to kill myself, or they're like The Last of Us, where it's like, wow, this is really good, but I already played the game. So I feel like this is kind of for diehard fans who want to experience it again, which I don't because that game tore me up. Or it's for people who will never play video games so that they can enjoy the greatness of The Last of Us. And in either case, all due respect to The Last of Us, congrats to them. They did a great job with that show. I don't know, most of this video game, TV, movie stuff doesn't usually mean anything to me or matter for me. But after seeing this brand new Fallout trailer that dropped, I don't know, last Friday or something, shortly after the podcast went live, I have a completely different tune. I mean, I don't know, man. I think this looks like, and it's hard to judge the whole thing based on a 3-minute trailer, but from what we're getting here, this looks like the most compelling. I'm trying to think if there's something I'm missing, but maybe the most compelling video game, movie, TV show piece of transmedia that I've ever seen. Like I'm very excited for this show. I feel like this show is going to be good based on this trailer, and so I don't know. I just want to sing some praise to that because I didn't give a shit that they were making a Fallout TV show, and now I'm actually pretty excited. And my guess as to why this looks so good, aside from the fact that it looks like they're doing a good job with it and they're remaining faithful to what makes Fallout good, is maybe a combination of two things. One, my just general ignorance and lack of like in-depth knowledge on the Fallout franchise. I have a very surface level kind of understanding of it. And two, just especially recently as I've gotten more and more into these Western style open world RPGs, it's like these games, the whole thing that makes them so special is like these really deep worlds to explore and just really compelling narrative through lines. And I feel like maybe that's the kind of game that makes the most sense to translate into something long form like a TV series, because you can really take the time to flesh out the world, the story, the setting, the events. And I don't know, maybe that's part of it, but it seems like it's going to be like this Fallout TV show is going to be a pretty good fit for adapting a video game into something you sit back and watch and absorb passively. So I'm pretty much here day one for this. I mean, obviously I have Amazon Prime because who doesn't have an Amazon Prime membership? That's how they fucking get you. But the show looks great. It looks funny. It doesn't look like really shitty, cringy CGI. The practical makeup and effects and sets and everything look wonderful. And it looks like they got a really good cast together. So Fallout TV show. I'm always excited. There's not really much to say here other than I'm just always excited when something that should be bad or something that I'd normally be a jaded asshole about gives me no good reason to be a jaded asshole. I just can't complain about this one. It just looks good. So April 11, 2024, that's about a month from now, all episodes will be streaming at once. We'll drop on that day. I'm definitely checking this show out. It looks pretty darn good. So shout out to the Fallout TV show. Please be what the Halo show could never be. Although, as a side note, I know they're like balls deep in season 2 of the Halo show. I haven't watched a single second of season 2. I hear that it is a big improvement over season 1. So congrats to those working on the show and the fans that they're getting something better out of that show. But after season 1, I just have no enthusiasm whatsoever to go back to the Halo show. Maybe one day, but for now, I like Paramount Plus. I signed up for 1 month, like the free trial 1 month of Paramount Plus in February to watch the Super Bowl. I subscribed on Super Bowl night, watched the Super Bowl, didn't get back on Paramount Plus a single time throughout the entire month, and then my subscription lapsed. And I could have been watching the first 4 or 5 episodes of that Halo show and just, I don't care. I know I have access to it, I just don't care. Instead, I just watched Curb Your Enthusiasm, so whatever. Time well spent, in my opinion. But anyway, let's move on. Fallout looks good. That's exciting news. Let's is next up. I feel like we don't normally pull stories like this, but this is a really compelling and interesting conversation that I'm really excited to dig into here, because I feel like this is something I'm always thinking about on a more subconscious level, but I've never really brought up on the show, and I feel like people don't have this conversation enough when it comes to like gaming enthusiasm and things like that. So I love that this notion's just being brought up all together, and so I want to read from this. This is the VGC write-up, but the story I think originally comes from an interview with Newspicks, which is foreign, so it had to be translated. But legendary video game music composer Nobuo Uematsu says that he thinks that some modern video game soundtracks are as interesting as those in older games. Uematsu is most famous for composing the soundtracks for the first 9 Final Fantasy games and working on numerous subsequent entries. In a video interview with Newspicks, Uematsu explained that, in his opinion, games that opt for soundtracks similar to those of Hollywood movies are hindering the progress of game music. Uematsu initially explained how the limitations of 8-bit and 16-bit consoles forced him to be creative with how he made soundtracks for the Final Fantasy games. He also explained how he continued similar methods in the PS1 era, even though it was capable of CD sound quality, because he wanted to avoid having games pause to stream new audio every time the game switched from exploration to battle. From Final Fantasy X on PS2 onwards, however, Uematsu says game music entered a period, quote, where we could pretty much do everything, and that it has become easier for me to express different genres of music like rock and jazz within game music. This modern period has led to game music becoming less interesting, according to Uematsu, because the directors and producers are satisfied with the movie soundtrack like music like experience in games. Uematsu said that he thinks people need more freedom when creating game music, otherwise it just doesn't develop further. And some of this just sounds a little choppy because it's the Japanese translation, but he wraps up and says, game music will become more interesting if composers consider what is something only I can do, and use that knowledge and that experience to truly be creative, he added. So I really appreciate this thoughtful response and discussion of a topic that like I just said, feel like never really gets brought up, but this is a huge gripe I have with a lot of modern day, especially AAA style games. And I don't mean to harp on, like, I feel like sometimes I rag on Sony. I don't mean this from like a fanboy perspective, but when I think about the games that are the biggest offenders of this shit, no doubt Sony games coming up like Uncharted, The Last of Us, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, and then even stuff like Call of Duty and Battlefield and all these big name super AAA games. I think of it the most, and definitely Xbox has some games that are offenders of it. But it's this thing where it's like your game is just scored like a fucking Hollywood blockbuster action movie. It's like there's nothing, you know. And I understand, like you hear a lot in I don't know what I don't know who said this. I wish I could remember because I don't want to take credit for it, because I certainly am not smart enough to have thought to make this comparison or draw this analogy. But they say, or it's not an analogy. The general wisdom is you're doing a good job when you're scoring a movie or you're scoring something when the music isn't something that is like standing out that you're fixated on. You're fixated on the dialogue, the characters, what you're seeing on screen, but the music is amplifying and helping support what it is you're watching on screen, and it's complementary to. It's not there in juxtaposition to. And I really fucking hate that kind of philosophy, because you know, we do have examples of modern games that have great music, of course. You know, specifically in the realm of Xbox, you have iconic scores for like Halo and Gears of War and stuff like that. But then you also have just the majority of games just being, and I want to be careful about this because a lot of these games have technically good music. Like it's well composed. It's very dynamic. You have a variety of instruments included. It's whatever. It's beautifully done. It's done by people who understand music in a deeper, more academic sense than I would ever be able to comprehend or begin to comprehend. So I don't mean to downplay it, but it's just very like orchestral, generic, like guy is climbing up the side of a cliff and it's raining and there's like a getaway car taking a girl prisoner, and you're Drake Bell from Drake and Josh, or Drake Fortune from Drake's Deception, or Uncharted, whatever, and you're crawling up the wall, and then you see the Jeep in the jungle, and you got to fucking hop on a motorcycle and chase him down, and then he's just like dun 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 dun, like whatever the fuck it's doing, and it's just like, yeah, that's cool. It's like, you know, it's like chase scene music or whatever. But what made video game like it's, you know, it's not like just some blind nostalgia thing that we all remember, you know, 16-bit music, and everyone knows the Mario and the Sonic, you know, theme songs and things like that. It's not just pure coincidence or nostalgia that explains why we all gravitate towards like chiptune music and in that 8-bit, 16-bit era, soundtracks and things like that. And it comes from the limited nature of those sound cards and what they could produce with that hardware, but also just the fact that that limitation caused people to have to be like, okay, I have a far more limited range of notes I can play and instruments I can choose from. I got to make really catchy shit with this. And as a result of it, we just got iconic fucking music. I mean, you can go on forever at Mega Man, Pokemon, like every game you ever played on a Nintendo, Super Nintendo or a Game Boy Color or fucking Sega Genesis, whatever. It's like all the same shit. The music is awesome. Dude, I think I'm almost 30 years old, and I think for at least 25 years of my life, on a weekly basis, I get the Flicky theme song stuck in my goddamn head, or the Bubble Bobble song stuck in my head, because this music's got it's brilliant, it's catchy, it's fun, it's infectious. And I'm not saying like, oh, I want to play Uncharted. I want them to make an Uncharted 5 where it's like do 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 do, like it's ridiculous, of course, but. We've gotten to this unfortunate point where games are so realistic and games are so cinematic and games try so hard to adapt what movies do well into an interactive medium that it's like the music kind of follows suit and just becomes this generic like orchestral nonsense. And I don't mean nonsense as in like it's not good music. I mean nonsense as in like there are very few games where it's like, you know what? I got my earbuds in. I'm on a jog or I'm driving or whatever. It's like, let me pop on that song. Let me hear that song again. You know, very few modern games where that's the case. I don't know. Like, what's a game I played pretty recently? I played Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I can promise you with full confidence, I will never in my entire existence go out of my way to listen to a second of the music that is in that game. None of the music in that game is bad, but I also don't remember a single split second of anything that happens instrumentally in that game. So that's the point I'm trying to make, you know? Like, I always gush about Sonic, and a huge part of why not only myself, but Sonic fans in general gravitate towards the Sonic franchise isn't even because necessarily the games are so good, but it's because historically Sonic games are on some fucking LSD, methamphetamine, autistic medication that makes every goddamn Sonic game just have 9,000 out of 10 music. Like, the music in every Sonic game is so good. And Sonic's one of those rare franchises where I was like, yeah, sure, in the 16-bit era, everyone's like, na 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 na. But you like fast forward to when they started getting like the full suite of music in video games, and Sonic music's still badass. You get fucking metal tracks, you get like these hard rock vocals and shit with all these Crush 40 songs. People listen, man. You tell someone you're a Sonic fan, you tell any disenfranchised 30-plus-year-old man, oh, I like Sonic the Hedgehog. They'll go, okay, and then they'll start singing Escape the City for you because they grew up playing Sonic Adventure 2 because everyone knows Sonic has great music. So, I don't know, man. It's different with vocal tracks. Vocal tracks are a little bit of a cheat because they're just inherently kind of more, you know, catchy and things that stand out to the human mind a little more, as opposed to like background, you know, symphonic supporting music rather than like main attraction kind of music. So it's a little bit of a apples to oranges if you want to put it that way. But the point still stands generally. It's like, yeah, man, I definitely feel like in gaming today, it's not that music is bad, because music is generally pretty good. And of course, there are tons of indie games that try to emulate, you know, older style games, and they have phenomenal music. I mean, God, I think of Celeste, the main theme for Celeste. Such a fucking beautiful song. Like, it's incredible. So like, it's not that we don't get games today that have phenomenal music. We certainly do. And it's not that some of these big AAA high profile games don't have beautiful orchestral, scores that complement the narrative and the world building really well. Like these games do. It's just, yeah, man, don't you just kind of miss it? Like, you think about it, it's like, we're talking about Final Fantasy here. We're talking about the composer of the original Final Fantasy games. It's like, how do you not think about, you know, the original, like the battle music of like old Final Fantasy games and stuff like that. That shit's iconic. The original Final Fantasy startup screen music, like the main theme, like, it's amazing. And that stuff even goes on, for as much as I hate it, and oh boy do I hate it, got to give credit where credit's due. Kingdom Hearts, Kingdom Hearts has really damn good music. I don't know if he did the Kingdom Hearts music, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. But anyway, I don't know. I just think this is a interesting point, and I don't know. I think one of the things that's so cool about gaming is, listen, I mean, it's clear for most gamers at this point, like the mainstream, like the Hollywood types and like the adults that didn't grow up playing video games and the more, academic type people and stuff, like gaming is never going to be, or seemingly is never going to be, accepted widely in these circles and never taken as seriously as it deserves to in the way that like novels and films are. And so it's like, I don't know, you shouldn't do this like if you can't beat them, join them thing by just having like generic, orchestral scores. And it's like, maybe you should just have fun with it and be like, you know what, fuck it, video games are different. Video games do their other things well. It's like, I feel like a big important part of the embryonic history of gaming is really outstanding, one of a kind music. And I feel like that's something that should try to be preserved. Not to say that every game needs to try and be that, but it would be nice to see more of it. I don't even know what I'm saying, so let's just move on. I don't know enough about music to even have this conversation, but that being said, let's talk about Sea of Thieves, because pirates sing sea shanties, and that's music. All right, talking about Sea of Thieves, VGC relays. Sea of Thieves is currently on the top of pre-order charts on numerous PlayStation 5 digital storefronts. As initially noted by on X by games industry data reporter Benji Sales, the premium edition of the game currently is at the number one slot on the PlayStation 5 console store front for the pre-orders in the US when sorted by best-selling. The standard edition is also on the top 10, sitting at the number 5 spot. This means that the game is currently being pre-ordered more times in the US than MLB The Show 24, Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, Dragon's Dogma 2 Deluxe Edition, Elden Ring Shadow of Erdtree, and Rise of the Ronin. Okay, the two here that really surprised me are Rise of the Ronin and MLB The Show. One, because Rise of the Ronin comes out soon, and two, because MLB The Show is a massive, long-standing Sony first-party game that sells like crack every year. And so while MLB The Show is, of course, somewhat niche, despite being a great seller, because, it only really appeals to baseball fans, a game like Sea of Thieves is more, mainstream or has maybe more wide appeal in terms of the entire gaming audience. Still, we're talking about a game from like 2017 compared to a game that hasn't even come out yet, and that's crazy stuff. So clearly there's a lot of hot demand on PlayStation for some excellent Xbox games, just like I'm sure it would be the case if you brought God of War Ragnarok to Xbox Series X. People would pre-order the fuck out of that game. I know I would. So it's awesome to see this happen, and it's exciting as fuck. And because, more people are going to get to enjoy Sea of Thieves, and it just shows that, the majority of PlayStation fans aren't weird little terminally online fanboys who just sit around all day talking about why their games are better than our games. They're just people who want to enjoy good games, and Sea of Thieves is a good game they've heard about and probably are like, I'm curious to try that shit out. And that's comforting and reassuring to know that most people are normal, well-adjusted human beings, and they just want to consume good shit. So that's awesome to see. Of course, maybe the downside to it is it's going to send quite a good signal to Microsoft that, like, hey, you should put more of your games on PlayStation. You'll make a lot of money. But, maybe there's also, to some extent, some of this is just the novelty of like, whoa, I can buy an Xbox game on my PlayStation, and maybe that novelty wears off after a while, and not every game does as well as Sea of Thieves. But it looks like Sea of Thieves is poised to do some damage. And I've been playing Sea of Thieves this week, so I'm in a little bit of a, I feel a little refreshed on the game overall, and I can say with confidence, yeah, if you're a PlayStation player who doesn't have access to Xbox and hasn't played Sea of Thieves, you're in for a fucking treat. This game's excellent, so the hype is totally warranted. All right, let's move on. One more before we get into the main show stuff. Summer Game Fest is returning this year in June. It's been confirmed. Producer Jeff Keighley has announced the show will return as an in-person event on June 7th. The show will feature thousands of in-person fans and will again be broadcast to YouTube from the LA theater. The YouTube theater in LA. It'll be broadcast on all the things, the YouTubes and the Twitches and whatnot. Okay, cool. So I'm curious to see if Summer Game Fest becomes a bigger deal now that E3 is officially dead, if more publishers and developers feel like this is the place to really put themselves out at. Because I do wonder if we're going to see less and less of this, like, let's do our own showcase, this smaller publisher or independent developers, like, we'll do our own Nintendo Direct style event. It's, especially with it being a slower year and kind of a rougher year for gaming, I feel like this is going to be a good place for a lot of people to congregate and try to do their big push for the year at this one event. So I feel like this is going to be a big year for Summer Game Fest, because this is really the first year where it's going to be solidified as the de facto game showcase for the industry, really, this summer. And then, of course, Microsoft will have their event probably in early June, as they always do. But, that's just Xbox. This is the industry as a whole. So, of course, we look forward to that, because that's the fun stuff. That's when we see all the trailers and we get to complain about not enough games or too much CGI or how long until this game finally comes out. Just normal gamer shit. All right, that's it really this week for all of our opening news segments. We don't have too much to get into this week. It's just a couple of, of interesting quotes and interviews from some compelling people, a couple smaller stories, some comments from you guys, the listeners. But hey, it's another week. It's another Xbox On, and I'm happy to be here with you. So let's keep the gravy train rolling as we head on over into the games I've been playing this week. But before I can tell you about the games I've been playing, I first got to tell you all about what it is I've been eating. And you guys, we're back for round 2. I vaguely remember, 2-3 years ago, coming on this podcast and being like, guys, I tried Del Taco for the first time in many years, and I was sorely disappointed. Del Taco, basically the runner-up in the competition of fast food taco, Tex-Mex style food to Taco Bell. A brand that maybe too many aren't familiar with, because while Taco Bell is kind of just everywhere, even internationally, Del Taco is a lot more regionalized, and I don't know if they're international at all, to be honest. But Del Taco, another famous American Tex-Mex kind of style fast food restaurant, originated out of California, just like Taco Bell, is very naturally so West Coast focused chain. But, in the past 15, 20 years or so, they have started to expand to random markets. It's not even like, they headed west. It's like they just picked some random ass states to open locations in. And I was lucky that around the time I was in high school, Georgia was just one of those random states they were investing in. And so we got a couple of Del Tacos that I enjoyed the living shit out of throughout my high school and college years, or early college, really my high school years. But anyway, just to say, back in those days, I remember Del Taco being fucking amazing, and maybe it was just because it was new and interesting, and I had Taco Bell so much up until that point, but I remember being like 17 years old, 2 a.m. at a Del Taco after a punk rock concert going, this is the best it gets. This is fast food at its finest. Fuck Taco Bell. And I remember genuinely believing that shit as a child, as a young, stupid, fucking 17, stupid kid. And anyway, fast forward to a few years ago, we got a couple of Del Tacos here in Florida. I think there's been a couple here, but we just got one a few years ago that's not too far from where I live. And so I remember giving it a try and being like, it's been a minute. How is Del Taco out here? And being gravely disappointed. Like, man, it's been a long time since I've had this stuff. It is nowhere near as good as Taco Bell, and just didn't have a good time at all with the Del Taco. And so this past week, I just had a weird urge to go back and give them another try, because what I was thinking was, I think the last time I went to Del Taco, I tried to order the kinds of things I would get at a Taco Bell at a Del Taco, and that's a mistake. That right there is a big mistake, okay? You don't go to Burger King and ask for a Big Mac, you get a Whopper. You don't go to McDonald's and ask for a Baconator, you ask for a Big Mac, because this isn't Wendy's, okay? And I was disrespecting Del Taco at the time by going there and trying to get, no beef sub chicken on my tacos and things like that, and like their version of a crunch wrap. When in actuality, you see, the thing that makes Taco Bell special, aside from the fact that they have Pepsi products and Baja Blast, is the fact that Taco Bell never stops experimenting. They always got some crazy shit. You don't get tacos at Taco Bell. You don't get quesadillas at Taco Bell. You get Crunchwrap Supremes and chicken chalupas and cheesy gordita crunches and Doritos Locos tacos, like stupid made up bullshit that's not real. That's what you get at Taco Bell, and it's always great. And at Del Taco, it works very differently. You don't get Taco Bell related items. You get Del Taco specialties. And what Del Taco specialties are their epic burritos. These are California style burritos. I'm talking French fries and steak and cheese and ranch and sour cream and guacamole all crammed into a fucking burrito. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. They're big, they're puffy, they're just fat motherfucker burritos, and they're fantastic. Also at Del Taco, Get the cheeseburger. What are you talking about? Why would you get a cheeseburger at Taco Bell like fast food establishment? Shut the fuck up. I said they're from California. Stop thinking Mexico, okay? You stupid, ignorant fool. Del Taco is a California establishment, so why not cheeseburgers? The best things at Del Taco are the burritos and the cheeseburgers. And then if we're talking dessert, they have these like caramel cheesecake fried bites, which are awesome, but we don't have to talk about that. So I went back to Del Taco for the first time in a couple of years this past Saturday, and I said, okay, I'm going to do my cheat meal here today. I've chosen Del Taco. This is my cheat meal for the weekend, and I want to indulge here. And I got the epic queso burrito and a couple of tacos. And the thing is, I made the mistake again with the tacos. I did the Taco Bell style, taco supreme. I want chicken instead of beef, blah blah blah. The chicken tacos kind of underwhelming. They weren't very good. And I was like, yeah, here we are again. Del Taco, not too good after all these years. But then I bit into the burrito, and I was like, okay, well, let's try the burrito. It's been many years since I've had a burrito from here, and this is what this place is all about. The burrito was phenomenal. I did steak. It had pico de gallo. It had French fries. It had white melty queso and a couple other ingredients and sour cream and stuff. And this burrito was fucking amazing. It was fantastic. The fries were awesome. There's so much steak in it. It was pretty good. Texture was good. The queso was awesome. This is like the wet dream burrito for a fast food restaurant. It's about as good as it gets for a fast food restaurant. In fact, I'll go as far as to say I will take a Del Taco burrito over a Taco Bell burrito any day. I'll take Taco Bell's novelty items. I'll take a Crunchwrap Supreme. I'll take a cheesy gordita crunch over most of what Del Taco offers most days. But Del Taco's burritos, this shit was fucking awesome, dude. So good. So I want to give a special shout out to Del Taco. You're not as good as Taco Bell. And also you have Coke products. So you're not as good as Taco Bell. I went through a weird phase in high school, as many of us do, and I have to just own up to the fact that I was a fucking weirdo in high school, and I thought Del Taco was superior to Taco Bell. It's not true, but there is room for Del Taco, and if you can find it in your hearts, and if you can find one within 50 miles of where you live, I'd say, hey, it's worth getting out there and trying a Del Taco and seeing what all the fuss is about. Try those cheesecake caramel bites. Try a cheeseburger. Trust me, they're fucking good. Try an epic California queso burrito thing. It's worth every penny. And so that's why I just want to say this week what I've been eating. Yeah, I've been cheating on Taco Bell a little bit with Del Taco, but Del Taco, you are a good girl, and I want to give you a little pat on the head. Not a good girl like I'm womanizing you, but like, you know, a good girl like a puppy dog or a kitty cat. Like, good girl, Del Taco. Yes, who's a good girl? And then, you know, Del Taco puts its butt up, kind of like a cat does if you pet it and it makes it happy. It's like that. So Del Taco, good shit. Just know what to order. It's not all good. Taco Bell is pretty safe. There's very few things on Taco Bell's menu that aren't worth your time, or that are, yeah. But Del Taco, you gotta be a little more particular. But when it's good. All right, guys, let's move on from what I've been eating and talk about the games I've been playing. Now, maybe this is a little underwhelming. I don't have too much more to add here because the main game I've been playing this week, surprise, surprise, Wasteland 3. I'm about halfway through this game now. I'm like probably 25 hours or so into the game. I didn't get as much time to play it this week as I hoped, so I didn't make as much a dent in it. But again, I really am trying to just, you know, there's a little bit of that pressure, not because for the sake of the podcast I want to talk about new games, but because when you're a busy adult, you know the feeling. It's like your interest is fleeting, and it's like I don't want to lose interest in what I'm doing right now and get sidetracked by another game. So like I'm really hoping I can see all that I want to see in Wasteland 3 and roll credits before it's time to move on to the next game. But luckily, even when there have been gaps of time where I just haven't been available to play games, I have very much had no problem whatsoever just jumping right back in and having a blast. This game is so good. All the things I said last week, it's just, I'm super into the story. I'm super into the world building. Again, it's that rare thing where like I care about the side content. I want to listen to what the random NPCs had to say. I'm just really like balls deep in this world building and just enjoying what this game is. So I love Wasteland 3. I will continue to play it and to continue to love it, and hopefully in the coming weeks get to the end and see what all this game has to offer from start to finish. But after that, I am already eyeing kind of like what my next project's going to be. I want to finish Dead Island 2, of course, but I also really want to get to that Star Wars Battlefront collection, as well as I'm want to get to Atlas Fallen. I've had that game downloaded for a little while, and I really need to get to it. So Wasteland 3, I've actually mostly been playing on my Series S this past week. I've been sitting in my office, just sitting at the computer desk with the Xbox controller in hand, playing it on my PC or on my PC monitor using a Series S, because PC gaming's for fucking squares. And with the Logitech G Cloud that I've been talking about the past couple weeks, I've been playing a totally different game on that sweet little lady. And that game is Sea of Thieves. My girlfriend really loves Sea of Thieves, and she has been asking me for a long time to stop being a lazy cuck and figure out how to make it so that we can both play the same game from Game Pass using my Xbox Live account, which I know you can do, but I've never done it because I don't play games with other people, and I'm such a loner that it's never been a thing for me. I've never needed to do it. So she got on my Xbox last week, and she's like, okay, I'm going to set this one to the home console. I'm going to do this and that so that she can be on her profile downstairs on the Xbox Series X, and I can be on either the Series S or the Logitech G Cloud and log into my account, and we can both share my Game Pass subscription and play a game like Sea of Thieves together. So this past weekend we played Sea of Thieves, and it was actually really nice because normally she's been asking me forever, like, can we play a game this way where, like, I go upstairs and play on my Series S, she stays downstairs and plays on the Series X, and we play together. It's like, I don't want to fucking put on a mic and chat with you while we play Call of Duty, 40 feet apart from each other. This is fucking weird. I don't want to do that. But this kind of solves the whole problem, really, the Logitech G Cloud does, because now she can sit on the couch in front of the TV, play the Xbox Series X, and I can sit next to her on the couch with the Logitech G Cloud in hand, and we can just play together and just sit next to each other. And I'm like, this is a lot more like a romantic couple watching a movie together and enjoying themselves, and a lot less like two sweaty teenage boys that haven't showered in 3 days, playing video games together after school because they don't have girlfriends. So I much rather enjoy, playing games with my girlfriend in this way. And it was a ton of fun. Yeah, I really enjoy being able to get more use cases and more, unique play style out of my Xbox with this Logitech G Cloud. And that's exactly what this has allowed us. And it's been a while since I played Sea of Thieves, probably when that Pirates of the Caribbean stuff came out a few years ago. So it's definitely been a little while since I played Sea of Thieves, but I gotta say, I really love this game. I haven't stuck with it, the whole time it's been going. I've missed a lot of story content, a lot of seasons. I'm not the biggest fan, or, like the biggest fan, the biggest, all around well-versed, storied player of the Sea of Thieves franchise. But I definitely really love this game, and see how it was such a good win for Xbox, because I remember so badly when this game was announced, hoping deep down, like, what was that, 2014 or whatever? Oh man, I really hope this is like Destiny. It must have been 2015. I really hope this is like Destiny, but for pirates, because I love pirates, and I think a game like Destiny would be really fun if you could be a pirate. And then realizing this game was not even close to a game like Destiny, despite still being a live service game. And then later realizing that what this game actually is so much better suited to a pirate game, and so much better for, for the sake of this own game's success and uniqueness. And I'm just so glad that it's not like a Destiny clone, but you play as a pirate, because really this game has a special sauce, a unique magic that no other game has. And it's just that it's every time I get back into Sea of Thieves, that feeling of like, okay, what are we going to do? It's like, well, let's go find someone who will give us a quest, and then we'll find a map. And then it's not like any other game. It's like, you don't like hit the menu button and go, oh, Sir Henry Johnson has given us a quest to fetch ancient treasure chests that can be found on the Galapagos Island, deep sunken under the Caribbean Sea. It's like, no, like, you gotta fucking find the pirate map, and then like you actually hold up, like you press buttons to hold up a pirate map in game, and you have to like look at the pirate map as you're walking around and doing stuff. So it all feels like sim like and in real time, and you're like trying to read the map, and there's no way to pick a little marker that's gonna be like, ooh, go this way to find the treasure. It's like, no, you gotta reference the map you have, go into your ship and take out the world map you have, and be like, okay, I think based on this map that the treasure will be on this island around this coordinate, and like actually coordinate everything, and then go and like set, lower your sails and raise the anchor and sail off and like do all the pirate shit. It's so fucking fun the way the game doesn't hold your hand and communicate everything to you. You just gotta work through it and find it out on your own and play with your squad and work through all that stuff together. It's like, it actually feels like a legitimate pirate sim without making the mistake of becoming too simulator-like. It's not a pirate sim because at the end of the day, it still is a role-playing game. It still is an action game. It still is a mission-structured kind of experience, which still gives it like purpose and in a way to make people like me who need like a start and an end to kind of keep them engaged there. So like it toes this line really perfectly. And I think that's what's so special about Sea of Thieves. And I don't know, I really love this game. So it's been nice kind of dabbling in that a little bit, getting to play that with my girlfriend. Hopefully she's less mad at me now because we finally done that. And yeah, that's it for what I've been playing. So yeah, nothing really new to say, but Wasteland 3 is phenomenal. And if you're not playing Wasteland 3, you probably have a small brain. And Sea of Thieves is a game that has good music because you can pull out your accordion and play the pirate songs, and that's fun. All right, guys, let's take a quick break and get into the main news. I think that's it for all of our opening segments. So yeah, see you back in a second. Oh, you know what? Scarlet Nexus and Persona 5. Those games have really good soundtracks for modern games. You know what? Japanese games, good music. Western-style games, meh. Hans Zimmerman, now doing the music for Galaxy Blade. I don't know, what's a game people are playing? Guys, let's talk about the main news segments. We really only have 2 news stories, and they're both kind of similar in that they are previous home console video game brand executives talking about the future of gaming in different ways. So there's a lot of parallel, I guess, in kind of what we're talking about here, but we're going to start with the bigger one of the 2, and I determined that because it is a former Xbox executive talking about the future of Xbox hardware. So IGN had a big old interview with Peter Moore, one-time president of Sega of America, who he was there during the end of Sega's hardware days, back when they killed the Sega Dreamcast. He was boss. He was the Xbox boss at one point. He oversaw Xbox in the 360 era. He even dealt with the trying times of the Red Ring era, and then the successes of the Xbox 360. And then, of course, went on to go work with EA and do stuff over with those guys. But he's got experience in hardware. He's got experience with brands of hardware that have gotten out of the business, and he has experience with Xbox. So I think this guy knows a thing or two kind of about what the behind the scenes looks like. And so definitely an interesting mind to get, to pick at and get some opinions and thoughts on. So IGN had a good interview with him, where they basically ask him a handful of questions, and there's a lot of stuff I didn't include here, so recommend you go check it out. But they talk about basically Microsoft and how they're going to handle the future going forward with everything that's going on with Microsoft starting to put some games on PlayStation, and will this kill their console business and the discourse around that. And so they asked him a couple of questions we're going to lift from here and get into all this. And I've kind of abridged some of it and combined some questions together and tried to make it a little more succinct for the sake of the podcast. But let's just jump right into it. Starting with this first question IGN asked that kind of sets the stage, and then getting to the meat and potatoes of it, where we get the bulk of his response, where he basically says that people at Xbox are probably right now having the conversation about whether or not they need to get out of the home console business altogether. So let's hope that's not the case and jump right into the news. So the first question IGN asks him, this is how it's kind of phrased. They say, I've seen a lot of talk about the console business essentially failing to grow in a long time. It's relatively stale number of customers, but if you look at the install base for each generation over the last, however, the needle hasn't moved significantly. Phil Spencer explained that Microsoft's recent layoffs in terms of the industry's failure to grow the gaming audience. Do you agree with this sentiment? So Peter Moore says the following. Yeah, well, the numbers don't lie. Let's not forget hardware is a messy business. If you extract hardware and look at the P&L, the profit and loss, on its own, it's brutal. But it's a facilitator to the software and the services that drive the industry. You've got a generation coming through now, and the concerns maybe Phil's talking about that's more likely to be utilizing their smartphones for everything, including their gaming time. From the perspective of what a console means, it used to be plug and play. It was easy, it was powerful, but that goes back 35, 40 years. What you're now seeing is certainly hearing from a company like Microsoft does the cloud replace the need for this bespoke hardware? Does streaming change the need for a gaming device that we use now, in particular smartphones? I don't think people are gaming less. They're just gaming differently. And more, you're seeing generations coming through that are not about to sit down for the evening in front of their TV. And it's always, as we had suggested, maybe feared, going to be snack-sized stuff. What can I do in 10, 12 minutes? What can I do on my lunch break? There's so much pressure on the gaming experience from everything else in the world. It's unbelievably and perhaps over-connected world dominated by social media, content, TikTok videos, gaming. While gaming is still robust, let's not forget we're probably $200 billion this year. It's fragmented across regions, across different content, and there's only so much time in a day, and there's only so many choices for us to use those hours. Information, entertainment, and more content. YouTube, streaming, Apple TV, Paramount, Peacock, etc. You go on and on. The linear television sits in the background for now, but with that immense opportunity to sit and gorge on content rather than interact with consoles. So basically talking about how people are changing the way they use their time. I mean, you think about it. I mean, I've been guilty of this. I'm sure everyone listening can recall a time like this. You know that feeling when you're at work all day or school all day, right? And you're just like, man, when I get home, I want to play this video game or I want to do, this thing. And you get home and come to find out you're actually fucking exhausted, and doing something like sitting down for 3 hours and playing a video game is a little too involved. And it's a little easier to just be like, oh yeah, I fucking saw a thing on the counter and I ate that sandwich, and then I sat down on the couch and said, okay, one YouTube video. Before you know it, it's pitch black outside. You got to take a shower and get ready for work the next day. And you're fighting to stay awake because you just spent the past hour and a half doom scrolling on your phone and watching a YouTube rabbit hole about the economy of Venezuela or some stupid shit like that, because it's just so much easier than being like, okay, I'm going to sit down and really focus on the campaign of Wasteland 3 right now. So it's a relatable experience. And then you just think about younger and younger generations that just really didn't grow up with a controller in their hands the way a lot of us did. So continuing on, so this is where they ask the bulk of their question this is where they ask their question that he gets into the bulk of his response to. And bear with me, it's a little long. I tried to trim it down as much as I could, but there's a lot of good stuff here. When asked by IGN if Moore believes that we're currently witnessing the final video game console generation, and if he believes the traditional hardware is coming to an end altogether, he said the following. Well, it's a great question already. PS5 saying, yeah, maybe we could sunset this thing, but no mention of PS6. Now look, Sony's very much a hardware company, so I'd say that's probably your barometer company. Microsoft, not so much. Microsoft, I'm sure, would love it if everyone moved into the cloud. The only thing Microsoft doesn't get to play in as well as anybody else is the smartphone business, right? Because that's where Apple and Google and their handset manufacturers will benefit from enormously, and they already are. They're making tens of billions of dollars without really trying with their 30% gaming royalties. I'm going to highlight some of that because it's really important. But I think it's a real serious question that's being asked, I'm sure, in Tokyo, in Redmond, and in Kyoto. Of course, Tokyo's where Sony is, Redmond, Washington's where Xbox and Microsoft are, and Kyoto's where Nintendo is. That's where everybody's working right now, because when you start off the next generation, you've already got to be ready to absorb billions of dollars in losses. And is the industry, giving all the layoffs and everything going on, is the industry ready for that? Look at Sony laying off 900 people the other day. A lot of them are in the UK. My two eldest daughters work at EA. They're all right, but they're always looking over their shoulders. You just never know. In tech broadly, Silicon Valley broadly, you just don't know what's going on anymore as everything evolves, and inflation hasn't helped. A lot of companies, gaming companies in particular, did not exit COVID well. They hired too aggressively, thinking that it was never going to wind down again, and of course it did. I always call it the Peloton theory of like, oh, we're forever going to be the home and we're forever going to be playing video games and jumping on a bike. Well, no, we're not. And if you thought that, as Peloton did, you geared up for the future. You geared up for that future. And that's why they're in such financial mess right now. Yes, amen. Preach, brother. This is obvious shit that most business executives seem to be too fucking dense to have thought about. Or too fucking cocky to have planned for. Anyway, he says, so I think that the answer to your question, and to all those questions that are being asked right now about, is that it'll be tied around, what do we continue to develop with Silicon, or how long do we continue to develop? The role of AI, what does that mean? You can't look away from that. Are these companies willing to go another round of multi-billion? And at the same time, you're just gearing up for another cycle where games may not embrace the console and just say, you know what? I don't need this. Times are tough. I've got my phone. I'm enjoying what I've got on my phone. There's plenty of games I can play. Failing that, of course, I have my PC, my Mac. I can do whatever I want there, and I really just need to spend what could be $600 on a specific piece of hardware just to play games. So both companies and gamers themselves are asking these questions. What if the PS6 can do what the PS5 can't? That would just make people jump from PS5, or the same with Xbox, the same with Switch, right? God forbid it's just an incremental upgrade. And I think that's what companies are also looking at. What can we do to extend the life cycle of this hardware? And then your Microsoft and your Phil. Actually, I want to highlight that. And then your Microsoft and your Phil Spencer, and you've got Satya Nadella coming in and saying, all right, what's the future here, and how's it play into a bigger strategy of cloud and Azure with AI? Because that's their focus. That's Microsoft. What are we doing here with AI development? How do you make your games faster, cheaper, with less people? These are all questions being asked, I'm sure. I'm not being a doomsayer. What I think Phil Spencer is doing is setting up some smoke signals that we're thinking very differently. And then the idea of them buying Activision Blizzard King, but they may not make any of those games ultimately exclusive to their platform. They may not be a platform. We really had our roots, which are software services company. So basically saying Microsoft is probably having the conversation about why would we make these games that are multi-platform, before we came into the scene, suddenly console exclusive, when we ourselves are rather agnostic with our software and our programs and our features. So IGN pushes on and says, can you comprehend Microsoft going third party in the same way as Sega? To which he says, I think the words first party and the words third party may just disappear altogether. It'll just be, we make great games, we deliver phenomenal services in which you can play our games. The first party, the third party, they're all legacies of hardware. I think the same question, let me highlight that. I think the same question that will be asked from Nadella and the executive team to Phil Spencer is, all right, what we just given you, whatever it was, $69 billion, but we don't have to fit, but what does the next 5-10 years look like, Phil? What is the long-term strategy? Exactly what's going on right now? And yeah, they'll be like, all right, we're thinking about the next generation of hardware, what it could look like, but the challenges will undoubtedly be coming from Nadella and what it looks like without hardware. And so we're going on that right now. And now we're looking at that more like EA, or are we looking at that more like Sony? So that's, I'm sure, the conversation that's going on. So let me highlight that. That's a very important part as well. And then finally, this is the wrap-up. IGN asked if he could envision a world where you see Microsoft releasing a game like Halo on PlayStation, which was a conversation that was being had at one point. He says, look, if Microsoft says, wait, we're doing $250 million on our own platform, but then took Halo as, let's call it a third party, and you could do $1 billion, you got to think long and hard about that, right? I mean, you just got to go, yeah. Should it be kept? It's a piece of intellectual property. It's bigger than just a game. And how do you leverage that? Those are the conversations that will always happen. How do you leverage it when everything else you could do? It's had its ups and downs, but look, Xbox wouldn't be Xbox without Halo. But yeah, I'm sure those conversations are happening. Whether they're coming to fruition, who knows? But they're definitely happening, I'm sure. And yeah, even alludes to the fact that there was a time where they were considering bringing Halo to Xbox, which is, a story that has been rumored many times before, and pretty easy to believe true, especially by today's Microsoft standards. So yeah, this isn't like some newfound perspective that makes us understand what's going on differently, but it is a former executive who knows how these companies operate, who knows where the industry is trending, who has the experience and the experience and the wisdom to know, based on what is happening now, what are the natural, steps, what are the natural conversations and things being studied and looked into as a result of what all is going on in the industry. And what it really does is it affirms all the things we're talking about as novices, as non-industry insiders, as just fans of the brand. We're sitting here podcasting, commenting, talking back and forth, having our own thoughts and theories, that we're not too far off base, that this is essentially what's happening. It's the things we speculate, the things we fear. Now, I really want to talk about this first thing he says, where he refers to PlayStation as a barometer, because I think this is actually like a really simple yet important piece of information, where I absolutely fucking agree with this too, because PC gaming is PC gaming. It's going to continue to be what it is. It's like gaming on the phone. It's just always going to be a place where you can play games because everyone needs to have a PC. Nintendo is going to be Nintendo, which is this weird odd man out, does its own thing. They build their own success by being fucking weird, and it's the smartest thing they could have done, because Nintendo's going to be fine because they're going to be Nintendo. But then it comes down to PlayStation and Xbox, and they play this traditional game of, we have hardware. We come with a new iteration every 6 to 8 years. It's more powerful than the last, so we can make more powerful, higher fidelity games. And we compete for, the market share with a couple of exclusives on each side and tons of overlap in third-party content to split the difference. And that, in that business, Sony is the one that comes out on top, because not only are they more successful, but they are the company that stands to lose a lot more if this industry gets shaken up, flipped on its head, and turned in a direction that they weren't prepared to move in, or a direction that they are not fit to compete in. And so for a company like Sony, whose majority, its biggest vertical of its business is PlayStation, they are the ones who cannot afford to just forego the hardware, to just move into a new future where it's cloud streaming and it's services and it's this and that, because their business model and their success is too foundationally built upon the business model of create a video game console, sell that video game console to millions of people, get them in your ecosystem, sell them games. And Microsoft is not in that same boat, because Xbox is a tiny sliver of what Microsoft does as a whole. And Microsoft as a whole has historically and in recent history reemerged as being very agnostic, being very much like, yeah, we make this program, we make our own OS, but we also put our shit on competing platforms like Mac. And we also make, our apps and our programs available on Android and Apple devices, because we are a services company that wants to be everywhere. We're cloud services, we're AI, we're search engine, we're operating system, we're all these kinds of things. We're productivity apps and clients and things like that, and email and shit, right? And so we want to be everywhere with everything. And Xbox more and more is starting to butt heads with the fundamentals of what Microsoft is, because Xbox's model relative to everything else at Xbox is, no, we're a closed ecosystem. We're like Windows Phone. We're like that thing that you guys are trying to get away from, where we have our own walled garden. We have our own games that only people here can play, and you have to buy our hardware to experience those games. And we try to get deals and partnerships with other companies to get their content exclusive, or for a limited time exclusive, only in our ecosystem. And Satya Nadella, who's not a video games man, he is a tech CEO, is looking at Xbox and going, that's great. This model made sense at one point in time for a lot of reasons, but in today's world, why the fuck are we making our own hardware? Why the fuck are we buying Activision, then potentially take some of their shit and put it behind only our ecosystem? Why the hell wouldn't we put Sea of Thieves on PlayStation? Look at the pre-order numbers. Clearly, there's so much more money to be made in being agnostic, in not having our walled garden, and not forcing people to buy our box, which is oftentimes a lost leader, so that we can get people in our ecosystem spending money on our services and our games. And that's where they make the money. And so it's really important to note, because Microsoft is the one that has the leadership that would pressure them to change, and is the one that has less financially to lose by taking a big risk and shifting. We've already seen them do that with just the pure existence of Game Pass. But PlayStation can't and won't do that, because they're more stable and they're more dependent upon this traditional method. And so as long as Sony isn't the one talking about maybe not making another PlayStation, or maybe building a PlayStation service where you just stream your games and it's like a platform and you can play it on any device and every screen is a PlayStation, until Sony is having that conversation, you can assume that there's at least the intention that the home console market will continue. But it then becomes quite apparent that Microsoft might not be able to hold on in the ring as long as PlayStation's able to, and that's what brings up the alarms going off in my head, and the concern about, well, how much longer does Xbox have in this fight of the home console market? And so right now they're asking the question, what can we do to extend the life cycle of this hardware, PlayStation, Xbox? And I think things like Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro and the rumored PS5 Pro that's coming out later this year, that's what that stuff is. It's a cry to keep the hardware machine going. And the fact that PlayStation said, hey, we believe in generations, and then never cut off the PS4 and kept putting all their PS5 games on PS4 for the most part, was a testament to how, hey, there's so much money to be made on that old hardware. We don't want to lose that market share just because people have to buy a new console. So we want to cater to as many people as possible, because we really want to hold on to our dominance, sell the most number of games in our ecosystem, engage the most number of players in our ecosystem. And that's why you see things like a perpetual support for things like PS4 and Xbox One. That's why you see this, like, everything is more PC-like, where it's just like, oh, every piece of hardware plays every game. Just hopefully yours isn't so outdated that it can't handle, the latest game. But it's just the lines are blurring between consoles, and we're seeing that more and more, especially with this current generation. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the last thing he says that I just want to point out It really is this. It's poignantly said because he was the EA guy for a certain amount of time, or one of the big EA guys. Not, he wasn't Andrew Wilson, but anyway, where he says, so what's going on right now, and what does it look like if we're more of an EA than we are like a Sony? And that being the question that these guys are asking themselves. And so Satya Nadella is probably, slowly pushing the chips and moving the needle and trying to whisper in the ears of the Xbox people like, hey, what's so wrong with being like Activision was before we bought them? What's so wrong with being like EA or Ubisoft? Why do we need to be like Xbox? Why do we need to have the console? Why do we need to have the operating system? Why can't we just be, the Game Pass service that people can get on other devices? And in a way, maybe what the Xbox team is doing by putting some games on PlayStation and kind of breaking the bad news and having these conversations, or these tough conversations with the audiences, is like, hey, we're being forced to head in a direction, and we're going to try and signal this to you as much as we can, little by little. These are the things you got to start getting comfortable with, because it's an inevitable direction we're headed into, because this is what the higher ups demand, because this is kind of where the industry is headed. And I don't think this is, as I said before, I really don't think that this is necessarily, and I know some of you commented and said the same thing, this is Xbox being a little too ahead of the curve again. And the reason I hate this is because Xbox always does that, or Microsoft always does this, and then something good suffers because they jumped into something way prematurely. That's why tablets didn't work for them in the late 90s, early 2000s, because they were just too early to the game. It's why Zune and Xbox Music Pass and all this shit didn't work. They pushed too hard, too fast, too early, always online, all of this stuff, and they end up shooting themselves in the foot. And so hopefully, that's not what happens, hopefully. But this is the path forward for Microsoft, and it's scary because we've all witnessed Microsoft fuck this kind of stuff up way too many times. And man, I just hope there's a way to justify always having that home console. Even if it's not the primary thing, at least as an option for us boomers. That's just my hope. But anyway, let's move on to our second story. This time we move over to previous PlayStation executive Sean Layden. And for this one, I have a little bit more of a abridged version, because I'm pulling from, this was an interview done with VentureBeat and Sean Layden, but I'm pulling from VGC's more condensed short form version of it, so we can get through this a little faster. And I don't want to spend as much time on this one because I feel like the first one was a little more prescient. But bear with me. Not nearly as much reading, so it's not going to be as boring, but we'll get into it right now. Former PlayStation executive Sean Layden has suggested the platform holder will need to consider releasing more games on PC in the future in order to cover up the huge budget for its first-party blockbusters. Now, of course, we're talking about PlayStation, but I think this applies to the industry at large. Both Xbox and PlayStation's biggest hits of the year so far, Palworld and Helldivers 2, have been fueled primarily by PC game sales. Sean Layden, who during his 30-year career at Sony served as CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment of America and chairman of Worldwide Studios, commented on the future of the console-exclusive business in a new interview with GamesBeat. Quote, this is what he said, "When your cost for the game exceeds $200 million, exclusivity is your Achilles heel. It reduces your addressable market, particularly when you're in a world of live service gaming and free-to-play. Another platform is just another way of opening the funnel, getting more people in. It's a free-to-play world. We know that 95% of these people will never spend a nickel. The business is all about conversion. You have to improve your odds by cracking open the funnel. And Helldivers 2 has shown that for PlayStation, coming out on PlayStation on PC at the same time, again, you get that funnel wider. You get more people in. Single-player games aren't facing the same pressure to release on multiple platforms," Layden said, "but if you're spending $250 million, then you want to be able to sell it to as many people, even if it's just 10% more. The global installed base for consoles, if you go back to PS1 and everything else stacked up from there, wherever in time you look at it, the cumulative console out there, it never gets over 250 million units. It just doesn't. The dollars have to go up over time, but I look at it and see that we're just taking more money from the same people. That's happened during the pandemic, and it happened to a lot of companies that overinvest. Look at our numbers going up. We have to chase the rocket." Layden, who is now advising companies such as Tencent and ReadyGG, how do you say that? I don't fucking Ready. Said that he believes the industry isn't doing enough to get non-console people into console gaming. Quote, we're not going to attract them by doing more of the shit that we're doing now. If 95% of the world doesn't want to play Call of Duty, Fortnite, and Grand Theft Auto, is the industry just going to make more Call of Duty, Fortnite, and Grand Theft Auto? That's not going to get anybody else. So I like what Sean Layden is saying here, because it's frustrating a little bit too, because I want to have something to say in response to this, but I feel like what he does here so aptly poses the problem, like the $1 million problem, but in doing so also underlines that where we currently are is a state where we just don't fucking have the solution. And what it looks like, because the reoccurring theme is always like, hey, console hardware is becoming something of a novelty. You could just play games on your computer. You could just play games on your phone. You can just play games on social media. You can just play games on an iPad. You can just whatever, right? There's so many ways to do things, and there's so many other things vying for attention: streaming services, social media, etc., etc. And what it sounds like he's saying is basically like, hey, video game hardware is potentially becoming like a horse, right? There was a point in time where the horse was a primary method of transportation. How did we all play our video games? By playing on home consoles. But eventually the car replaced the horse, and the streaming services, the AI, the low latency, high speed internet, social media, smart TVs, smartphones, all the rest. You combine it all together, that's just the car replacing the horse. Not to say that the horse is going anywhere, but maybe the horse is becoming something of like a hobby or a novelty, or kind of a more niche alternative. I mean, aside from Amish people, you don't really see people riding on horseback to get around town, right? So I almost wonder if that's kind of the situation we're in, and that's the way we need to start looking at it, where you could almost imagine that maybe there is a way to keep the hardware around, but it's going to have to become some ultra expensive niche hobbyist kind of alternative thing, right? Maybe we reach a future in 20 years where 90% of people are playing God of War 7 via the cloud, right? They're playing it on their Samsung TV. They're playing it on their iPhone at work. They're playing it in their Apple Vision Pro, like whatever the fuck it is, right? That's where people are playing games, let's say hypothetically. But for those who want the authentic, original, true experience, you can buy this PlayStation 7 or this Xbox Series November, whatever the fuck it's called. Why was it called that? And it's I was thinking N, and then my freaking I always say letters and fucking military code for my work. Anyway, doesn't matter. Maybe we still have an Xbox in 20 years. Maybe we still have a PlayStation in 20 years, but it's like a record player, It's like owning a horse. It's more of a novelty. It's more of a it's like riding your bicycle to work. It's like, oh, cool. You live in a very walkable city and you drink like expensive coffee. Okay, you ride your bike to work. I get it. But the majority of people are driving their fucking car because that's what makes sense. And so, listen, while I don't prefer for that to be the future, because my limited, tiny brain with very limited perspective can't fathom this world, it is better to have that than nothing at all, right? So you could imagine, like, yeah, maybe consoles can't continue to be $400 and $500, and maybe one day they have to be $1,000, $1,200. Maybe if you want to continue to play on a piece of Xbox hardware that runs games natively and connects to your TV, and you have a controller and you play the old school way, maybe you gotta spend $1,200 on that console because they're selling it to fewer and fewer people. Because more and more people just play games the other ways, the many other ways we've just listed 100 times. So I'm hoping that's not the case, but it does seem like that's kind of the predicament we're in. It seems like, Phil Spencer said it honestly last year. We got Peter Moore addressing it. We got Sean Layden. And Sean Layden's a really important figure because when he was leaving Sony, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, right before the pandemic hit, maybe a year before the pandemic, he was signaling all of this shit back then. He was saying, like, watch out, games are becoming way too expensive to produce. The industry is shifting, like things are not, we're not in a sustainable model right now. And it's true. We're starting to really see it unfold fast. And so you got to listen to a guy like Sean Layden, because he clearly fucking knows what he's talking about, and he's been right before. And so you'd be wrong to not heed his words, at least. Yeah, this shit sucks, man. It is exciting in multiple ways, and it is frustrating in multiple ways. Because I love the idea of put all the games on all the platforms, let everyone experience them. I love this. I want this. I'm excited people are gonna play Sea of Thieves on PlayStation. I'm glad I got to play Helldivers 2 on my PC because I don't have a PS5. This is all great shit, but man, oh man, just let me continue to buy an Xbox console to play my games, for the love of Christ. And that's the scary part about where we're heading. All right, that's it for all the big news stories this week, you guys. Let's wrap up with the important enough news stories, important enough to make the podcast, but not important enough to warrant their own discussions. Thankfully, we don't have to talk about layoffs this week, which is really a huge bonus plus thing. But a couple of small news stories to get into, so let's just rattle them off. Actually, there's a handful. From VGC, Grandia HD Collection will finally be released on Xbox consoles this month, featuring remasters of Game Art's classic RPGs, Grandia and Grandia 2, which were originally released in 97 and 2000 respectively. The collection comes to Xbox One on March 26th and will be backwards compatible on the newer consoles. Limited Run Games will also be releasing a physical version of the game. Pre-orders go live March 15th, this Saturday. Next up, from IGN, System Shock fans who lack a gaming PC will be able to play a remake of the first part of the first game pretty soon. A new trailer for System Shock Remake on console ports has been revealed and will be coming on May 21st for Xbox One and Series consoles. The announcement comes nearly a year after Night Dive Studios released System Shock Remake on PC. Next up, Forza Motorsport car progression system is being overhauled as part of the game's 6th major update. In January, Turn 10 acknowledged the complaints the fans had with the progression system following an update 6 that came out this week. All car parts for every vehicle will be unlocked at car level 1, meaning that console and PC players can upgrade in any order they wish. Secondly, car points will be obtainable within game credits at a ratio of 4,500 credits to 500 car points, which I don't know what that means fully. But anyway, this should hopefully fix things for a lot of fans and make people less pissy. Next up, Battlefield series has lost another high-profile figure in the form of Craig Morrison, who has left his role as studio creative director at EA's DICE. According to his LinkedIn profile, the game designer departed the Battlefield maker last month to take on the same role, but at Blue Scarab Entertainment, a new studio based in Stockholm, Sweden. All right, he joined the team back in 2021, so he hasn't been there too long. Next up, VGC relays that Payday 3 developer Starbreeze is searching for a new CEO following the removal of Tobias Jorgen. So he was basically laid off, so I guess that kind of counts. In a notice to investors, the Stockholm headquartered developer said that it needs different leadership following the difficult period of instability in the wake of Payday 3's launch. So the game is doing very bad apparently. So apparently it's underperforming compared to Payday 2, a game that's been out forever. So that's unfortunate stuff. Next up, veterans from the likes of id Software and Naughty Dog have announced a new AAA studio called Empty Vessel, based in Austin, Texas, where everything comes from nowadays. But operating fully remote, the staff is working worldwide. The studio is led by CEO and game director Emmanuel Palak and COO and general manager Garrett Young. So this is senior character artists at id Software, people that worked on Doom, people that worked at the Walt Disney Company, and people that worked on Naughty Dog games like Uncharted and Last of Us. So this is some serious talent. And finally, Star Wars Jedi game director Stig Asmussen, who left the studio last year, is forming a new team called Giant Skull, a new AAA studio dedicated to building gameplay-driven, story-immersive action adventure games set in captivating worlds. Whatever. We hear about these all the time. Let's see what comes of it. He left the team last year to focus on something new after working on the first 2 Jedi games, Star Wars Jedi games. All right, guys, and that is going to do it for all of the news this week. Now it is time to head into the final segment of the show, the best segment of the show, the comments, the shout-outs from youtube.com. You know how it works. You head on over there, and you leave a comment on the latest episode of the podcast. You can say anything nice, anything mean, or anything in between. You guys, as always, I ask, kindly, humbled at your feet. If you have the means to do so, if you have the opportunity, please, if you wouldn't mind, leaving a 5-star review on podcast services or a subscription on YouTube or a thumbs up, whatever the fuck it is. Anything like that helps. Just trying to grow the show, get it in front of more people. We recently hit 1,100 subscribers on YouTube, which is just, nice little milestones. Obviously, the growth of my YouTube channel, the growth of this podcast has been quaint to say the least. I never expected Xbox On to garner any audience, let alone the audience it already has. So I just want to put things into proper perspective. I'm really appreciative of all of you that do listen to the podcast. 250 weeks in a row I've been doing this fucking thing, and I really do it as a labor of love. It's something I just love because this is my outlet to talk about video games. This is my way of getting to have a conversation with friends about video games, something I really just don't get to do anymore because I don't have friends who give a shit about video games, to be honest. When I hang out with I was hanging out with a buddy the other day, and what we talked about was Disney and running a marathon and stupid nerd shit like that. And we talked about our jobs. It was it's good to see my buddy. I love the guy, but I don't get to talk about video games ever. So this is my outlet to do that. And I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to do that by listening to the podcast and supporting it. And so if you wouldn't mind, I'd love a review or whatever, just something to help kind of push the show up the algorithm a little bit so that maybe we can find some new listeners and continue to grow this thing, because the more you guys write in, the more you guys engage with the show, the more fun it is for me to do it. And I think the better a product it is. And so I just appreciate you guys for being here for 200, whether you've been here for 250 episodes or one episode, as cliche as it is to say, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. Our first comment this week comes from Jay Comatose, who says, bigger and longer doesn't always mean better. Quote, Jesse DeRosa, 2024. I guess it's something I said last week in regards to, apparently last week I alluded to dating your sister, and bigger and longer isn't always better. So maybe you shouldn't leave that 5-star iTunes review. Maybe just go ahead and click off now. Save us all the trouble. Cody Pavone writes in and says, I could have sworn a little bit back you said you wanted to cut back on the cursing on the podcast. I did. And it's and not going to lie, I like the unfiltered rants and the tangents. Keep on swearing, Jesse. Well, good news for you. I fail at almost everything I set out to do. So fuck yeah. I'm still saying bad words more than I'd like to. But thank you. You said, P.S. Disrespect your surroundings. I know you'll understand. I assume you're referencing A Day to Remember. Why do you know I know that? Why do I know that? I don't even listen to A Day to Remember that much, to be honest with you. You know what I've been listening to a lot lately is that new Alkaline Trio record. Very good stuff. Very good. Shout out to Cody Pavon, who he's bigger and longer. And guess what? It is better. All right, next up, a continuation from last week. Tim R. was writing in. He said, hey, I still play on an Xbox One. Should I upgrade to a Series S or X? Should I just wait for the next generation of Xbox hardware in a couple years? What do you think? So I asked for more info. I said, give us some more context around the scenario. Tim R. says, more info as requested. And he says the following. Yes, I still play on my Xbox One. It's one of the two consoles I own, the other one being a Nintendo Switch. I play older games because I'm cheap and I only buy games that are on deep discount. I'm looking forward to a newer generation of games, but I just can't swing it financially. With that said, I'm not interested in a Series S because I value physical media despite it being phased out. I'm okay with cloud streaming, but only for subscription services. Also, side note, off topic, why can't I play my Xbox 360 version of Diablo 3? I thought Xbox was the king of reverse compatibility. Well, whoa, Tim R. I never said that. Well, they are the best of the other competitors, but no one's perfect at it. Keep in mind the backwards compatibility initiative required the publisher to basically give the back-end thumbs up to allow these games to be backwards compatible. So I wouldn't be surprised if Activision Blizzard only ever gave the green light thumbs up to the Xbox One version going, well, actually, they never gave the thumbs up to Diablo 3 on Xbox 360 because they don't have to do it for Xbox One games going forward. They just had to do it for Xbox 360 games. So I'm assuming Diablo 3 was never on the backwards compatibility list. It just didn't make the cut. There was quite a few games that never made the cut, and you can find plenty of information on the internet about all these games because people love to bitch and moan about the games that aren't on the list. So like Mercenaries 2, World in Flames. But anyway, I'm sorry, Timar. I'm sorry. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But back to your main conversation. So yeah, man, I mean, if you prefer to play games on the cheap, but you also insist on physical media, that puts you in a very, I feel like you're kind of answering it all for yourself then, right? Because you're putting yourself in a pretty, and I don't mean this in a negative connotation, but, for lack of a better phrasing, you're putting yourself in a pretty rigid situation where like you can only really stick to the previous generation, right? Because the Xbox Series S is the perfect affordability point to jump in and get a cheaper Xbox, but it's digital only. And the Xbox Series X, while it can be had for far cheaper sometimes, you just got to keep your eyes out for the right deal and wait for the time. It sounds like you're kind of satisfied with waiting for a cheaper solution. Personally, I think we are, maybe this happens in the next generation, but I feel like we're getting closer and closer to this reality where all consoles are going to be diskless. You're not going to be able to buy a console that has a disk drive, but all consoles will be compatible with USB plug-and-play disk drives that you'll be able to buy for those who want to play physical media. So I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation of Xbox is literally that. I wouldn't be surprised if the next affordable Xbox that comes out in 2 years is basically an Xbox Nintendo Switch, and when you dock it, you can plug it into a disk drive. So that might be the perfect device you're waiting for. But yeah, I mean, if you can hold out and be patient, then just wait for the next generation, because then you can get a Series X for dirt cheap, or just wait for the next time Xbox Series X goes on sale for $300, because I mean, it was on sale for that like just 2 months ago or something like that. So you can get a Series X for really fucking cheap sometimes. It's not doing as well as Xbox would love for it to. So it's, finding a sale on an Xbox Series X isn't going to be the most challenging thing in the world. But that being said, I mean, hey man, as long as you're cool with streaming things to your Xbox One for now, I guess knowing that in the future you'll be able to collect those games, add those games to your collection if you choose to, then by all means, man, do what you gotta do. But I don't know. I would say either keep your eyes peeled for the inevitable $300 sale for the Xbox Series X again, which I assume we'll probably see one at the latest this fall, or maybe a little bit before that, because remember that new Xbox is coming out this year, that like slim model or whatever of the Series X. So you're probably going to see Xbox try to like get rid of all their inventory of the current Series X. So I'm sure you'll be able to find a lot of these old Series X's on fire sale. So I'd just keep your eyes open for that. If not, we're 2 years away from the next generation of Xbox. Maybe see if that generation is going to have exactly the device you're looking for, because I feel like it just might, but don't take my word for it, because I'm too stupid to go off of. Tim R., I'm sorry, I genuinely want to help you, but I feel like I'm not offering good advice, so I apologize for that, but I appreciate you writing in, and I hope you're having a wonderful week. And also, as Jay Comatose reminded us, bigger doesn't always mean better. Sam Frito writes in and says, Maneater, my favorite Banjo-Kazooie clone from Tripwire, who I never knew were in the States until you brought that up. Thanks, Jesse. The state. Georgia, not Florida, to be clear. Sam Frito. Sorry, I was trying to drink water. I'm like losing my voice. Sam Frito, how is Maneater anything like Banjo-Kazooie? I do not understand. Please elaborate and or comment in with a brief description of a time where you embarrassed yourself in front of a date. You were on a date, you embarrassed yourself, you did something silly, and now you're older and you're not so embarrassed about it, but you can look back and laugh at it because you got a good sense of humor. Tell us that story, Sam. We're dying to know. Final comment comes from none other than Headhunting Halo, the sexiest, biggest, hunky little fucking Halo brute you've ever seen. And he says, I'm playing Final Fantasy 15, and damn, I love it. I'm in love. Definitely platinuming this gem. I bought the first 6 Final Fantasy games on PlayStation Network for $75 plus all pixel remasters, and I'm going to be a Sony fanboy for about a year or so thanks to Final Fantasy, LOL. I need Banjo! Give me more Jingos. What did I say last week about Banjo that everyone's saying Banjo-Kazooie? What the fuck happened? I need to take notes about the things I say so I can remember. Headhunting Halo, this is an Xbox podcast. How dare you have fun on PlayStation for more than one game at a time? You're supposed to, from time to time, veer on over to your PlayStation, play a game, enjoy it, and then come right on back home to the Xbox. You cheating slut, you piece of whore, you. I love you. Hope you're having a wonderful week, and thank you all for writing in. That's it for our comments this week. I don't know, nothing thought-provoking to talk about this week. We're just trying to reassure ourselves about our unimpressive reproductive organs. Guys, thank you for listening to Xbox On Podcast, episode 250. That's going to wrap it up for us. A little shorter than it's been in recent history, but it's just kind of a slow news week. I'm losing my voice in record-breaking time this week, so I'm going to hang it up here. Hope you all have a great week. Play some good video games. Give that Wasteland 3 a try if you haven't already. Be sure to give Del Taco a try if you haven't already. The epic burritos are the way to go. And until next week, be kind, be fine, pay your fines. Fuck, I have jury duty, I think, in a week. I've never been called jury duty. I have jury duty for the first time. Wish me luck. Empower your dreams.